Hello and welcome to the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lena Elsaya Lee, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok and Instagram. The Jesus Witch podcast is a show dedicated to opening the conversation about including Jesus in witchery practices. The goal of this podcast is to not be evangelical. The goal is to spread the love, light, truth, acceptance, and oneness that is Jesus Christ himself. Here at the Jesus Witch podcast, we believe all people are loved by God and all people are loved by Jesus. We believe in community and the power of fellowship. We believe in giving whatever you reasonably can to help your neighbor who's in need. And above all, we believe in the power of creating a relationship with Jesus that is authentic and unique to you. Join me for new episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast every single Monday, and be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lena Elsaya Lee, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok and on Instagram. This is our first official episode of season 6 of the Jesus Witch podcast. I really can't believe that I have been doing this podcast so long to say that there has been 6 seasons. Although there was 4 seasons in 1 year. This podcast is only a year and a half old. But anyway, I'm trying this year to limit the amount of seasons. My goal was to do 2, but life happened. Unfortunately, I had a loss in my family, so I had to take a couple weeks off to kind of recuperate and get myself back on track. But now we're in season 6. I'm so excited about it. I have a lot of different episodes planned for you guys. I have one on grief, which has obviously been influenced from the things that I've went through these couple of weeks. Tips on spoonie witching, which is witchcraft for low energy people who have chronic illness or mental illness, something that limits you from fully putting 100% of effort into all the things all the time, which is me. It's me. Hi. I'm the spoonie witch. It's me. I also have an episode that I've been writing on the Empress Tarot card. It's been a hot minute since we did a tarot card episode, and I really wanted to get back into those, just to learn a little bit more about tarot for myself, for my own practice, but also because I feel like it really affirms these tarot episodes, and reading the Signs and Wonders book, which is about Christian tarot, which is the book that I used to help write those episodes, really helps affirm for me that tarot is a Christian practice, is something that comes from God. So I like doing those episodes. I have another episode that I want to do on worship music. I want to do an updated episode on worship because I like the one that I did last year, but I love the one that I'm writing now. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got to revisit things that you did in the past, but those are just a few episodes that I have in the works for this season. Today, we're going to be kicking season 6 off with a shorter episode and one that's kind of more like a Bible study than anything. We're going to be looking at Matthew 7 today and kind of dissecting some of the verses, what they mean to me, and how I use them in my personal practice. I wanted to do an episode on this particular group of verses because one time we were doing a hangout in the Jesus Witch Church, which is my free Discord group. You could find the link for the free Discord group in the show notes page if you want to join us, and you should, because we're doing more moon circles and Bible studies and church services and all those things now, so we're doing more of that again, so you should come and join us. But anyways, we were doing some sort of circle in the Jesus Witch Church. We were talking about this verse, and I'm like, I did a podcast episode on this, didn't I? And everybody's like, no, Lena, you didn't. There was a different verse you did a podcast episode on, not this one. And I genuinely thought, because I talk about this Bible verse so much on TikTok, that I did a podcast episode about it. So I figured, why not actually do a podcast episode about it so that next time I get confused and say that I actually did do one. But anyway, this is the start of season 6. Welcome. Let's talk about some Jesus and the Bible. So we're going to be looking at 2 different sections in Matthew 7. The first we're going to be looking at is Matthew 7, 1 through 6. And then the second one we're going to be looking at is Matthew 7, 7 through 12. I wanted to look at these 2 verses separately because they both have very different meanings, but at the end of the day, I feel like they tie in together quite nicely. So I wanted to look at them both individually and then come back together and say why I feel like you can't have one without the other, if that makes sense. So let's start off with Matthew 7:1, which Jesus says, "Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. For you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging will be the standard in which you are judged by. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own eye? How can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye, when you can't see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrite! First get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Don't waste what is holy on people who are unholy. Don't throw your pearls to pigs. They will trample the pearls and turn to attack you. So in the first part of this group of verses, Jesus is saying, do not judge others and you will not be judged, for you will be treated as you treat others, right? So this is where that whole saying, treat others the way that you want to be treated, is taken from. And that's why people say it's like a biblical quote. It's not technically biblical because it's literally like not written, treat others the way that you want to be treated. No, that's not the exact verbiage, but obviously Jesus says something, similar enough. He also tells us in one of like the 10 Commandments to love our neighbors like we love ourselves. So we are treating others the way that we want to be treated. We are loving others the way that we want to be treated. And that's why it is so important, not only like, that verse that says, we love neighbors like we love ourselves, but this verse here in Matthew is also another reminder of why we need to treat ourselves well and why we need to treat ourselves decently, right? In other parts of the Bible, it talks about how our body's a temple, how we are gifts from God, we are creations of God, how God chose who we were going to be and fashioned exactly who we were going to be in our mother's womb, no matter who you are, right? So it's important to embrace yourself. It's important to love yourself, because if you don't do that to yourself, can you really do that to other people? And if you're not loving yourself, right? If you're not loving on yourself, what are you doing to yourself? You are judging yourself. You are nitpicking yourself. You are saying, why did I wear that today? Why does my hair look like this? Why did I say that to that person? Why am I so awkward? Like, these are the things that you're going over in your head and you're mulling over in your head, right? So then when you see somebody else, what are you thinking about that person? You're comparing yourselves to them, and then you're judging them based on this impossible standard that you have created for yourself in your head. So it's like, as much as this is a ridiculous sentence to say, and I understand the irony of this, it is much easier to accept yourself and love yourself than to judge yourself, because your view on the world and your view on other people changes when your view on yourself changes first. And then the next part of this group of verses has to be one of my favorite groups of verses in the entire Bible. And if you follow me on TikTok, which you should follow me on TikTok, you can find the link for that in the show notes page, or just search up Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok. But make sure it's really me and not one of the scammers that uses my freaking name and profile to try to like scam money out of people. It's crazy. But anyways, this is the group of verses that when I'm on TikTok and you get me on a bad day where I'm feeling extra New York spicy, this is what I reply to people with. Because me personally, and we're going to talk about that towards the end of this verse of not arguing with people who don't want to listen to you. I don't see the point in arguing with people and arguing with evangelicals. I don't see the point in trying to change their mind. I don't see the point in trying to quote unquote convert them. Like I say at the beginning of this podcast, in our little introduction, the Jesus Witch podcast is not meant to be something that's evangelical. It's not meant to be a mission. I'm not here to baptize all the nations as a Jesus Witch. No, my job as Lena the Jesus Witch and as the host of the Jesus Witch podcast is to educate you on Jesus, on who he is, on his life, his legacy, his love, and then how you can use magic with him, with the Bible, what the Bible really says about magic, who in the Bible was doing magic themselves. That's my job. My job is not to force you to get into some baptism waters. That's not what I gain. I don't gain anything from that, right? I gain things from people saying to me, hey, Lena, you really opened my mind on this one thing. Thank you for that. And I don't argue with people to get there. I just put out the kind of content that I do. I put out my free podcast. I put on all these TikToks. I have a free Discord community. I have a lot of free resources, as well as my paid resources that are on Patreon, where I teach you specifically how to do Bible-based spells and how to make tarot spreads and all these different things. But I put all these resources out to help educate you so you can come to your own conclusion. People on TikTok who are leaving evangelical comments about repent, sinner, and you're sinning, you're doing the wrong thing, you shouldn't be, blah, blah, blah. Those people, they're there to try to convert you. I mean, and as much as Jesus says, baptize, all nations to make disciples, Which method do you think is more effective in doing that mission for Jesus? Loving on people, letting them be themselves, letting them come to their own conclusions, letting them find Jesus on their own, or threatening people, telling them how much they're sinners, how they're going to go to hell, how they're like horrible, how they're disgusting because of the way that they worship God. What do you personally think is more effective? Me personally, obviously, I think, the former is more effective and the latter is spiritual abuse. I mean, like that, but that's my personal opinion. Which is, a spicy opinion. I told you, this verse brings out the New York spicy out of me because it's just, Jesus is literally saying to these people, mind your own business. Stop going around and looking for everybody's sin. Instead, look at yourself. What is it about you that you can fix? Because nobody's perfect. Like to quote Hannah Montana, nobody's perfect. I gotta work it, right? So nobody's perfect in this world. So we all gotta work it so that we, again and again, to make it right? I literally just quoted Hannah Montana. I'm ridiculous. But you know what I'm saying here? Like, if you can't see within yourself what you need to work on. I've talked about this on the podcast before. Your girl can be angry. I can be very quick to yell, quick to speak, not to listen. Like, that is something I struggle with. And instead of like saying to myself, oh, because I am the leader of the Jesus Witch Church, I am perfect. No. I admit I have problems and I work on my own problems instead of looking at everybody else and being like, I think this is wrong because you casted a spell and it like impeded on somebody else's free will. Like, that's not my job. I have to deal with the plank in my own eye. I'm not here to deal with your specks. I'm here to deal with my plank. If you come to me and say, hey, Lena, I have this speck in my eye, I need help with it. Yeah, then I'll help you. Then I'll support you. But my job is to not nitpick you. That is not our jobs as believers. Our jobs as believers in Christ and followers of Christ is to work on ourselves to become more like Christ ourselves. And in doing so, that's your testament. That's your mission. That's how you spread the word of Jesus. By loving people, by loving yourself, by changing yourself, by showing people it is possible to change your person. It is possible for me to not be an angry person. I used to be a lot more angry than I am today because now I work with Christ and now I intentionally use Him and use His love to get myself to this point of being more peaceful. Right? So it is possible to do these things. You just have to work on yourself and mind your own business. Stop going around and nitpicking other people. Instead, look internally and healthily, I'm not saying judge yourself, healthily see these behaviors that you're doing and say hey, for me, yelling at everybody is not healthy. It's not good for me as a person. Not only is it not good for other people to be yelled at, right? It's not good for me. My heart rate gets risen. I start sweating. I start shaking. My stomach hurts when I get that angry. How is that healthy for me as a person? Right? So wouldn't I want to change that? So thinking about it from a health perspective, from a is this really in my best interest to be this kind of person, or is it in my best interest to be more Christ-like and do whatever I can to change that behavior? So that's personally, that's what that verse means to me. It means that I need to look internally instead of externally at other people, and I need to focus on changing myself instead of those around me. And now a quick break from our show to talk about a few different ways you can help support the Jesus Witch podcast. One way you can help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast is by becoming a Patreon supporter of the show. Every supporter of the Jesus Witch podcast on Patreon gets access to our monthly community oracle card readings, as well as access to a secret Discord channel in the Jesus Witch Church. In that channel, you can leave any Jesus Witch questions or suggestions that you may have, and it's just a better place for us to connect as a Patreon community. We currently have 5 different Patreon tiers for you to choose from to help expand your knowledge on Jesus and Christian witchery. The first tier that we offer is the Mercury tier, and this provides written transcripts of each episode of the Jesus Witch podcast to make them more accessible and easier to take notes from. The next tier that we have is the Fool, and that provides early access to the Jesus Witch podcast as well as ad-free episodes. The following tier is the Magician tier, which helps to expand your Jesus Witch knowledge with tarot spreads to help you connect with the Abrahamic Pantheon and monthly Bible-based spellbook pages. In the Hierophant tier, we go even further with Bible-based spell work. Each month, members of this tier get access to an additional Bible-based spellbook page. I also send you a mini spell kit every single month with the ingredients to cast your spell. With this tier, you also get access to a monthly spellcasting circle that happens over Zoom, where we cast the spell together, and it's a really fun time. Our final tier is the High Priestess tier. This tier gets everything from the previous tiers, as well as a one-on-one call with me over Zoom every single month to talk about your practice, where it's going, and what your goals are spiritually. Another way to help support the Jesus Witch podcast is by shopping at the Sun and Moon Jesus Witchery shop on Etsy. Over on my Etsy shop, I offer Talking to Jesus tarot readings, Christian witch mystery boxes, Bible-based spell oils, astrology readings, and so much more. You can also help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast by sending a donation directly to my PayPal or Cash App. You can find the links to both of those or any of the other ways to help support the Jesus Witch podcast in the show notes page. And a quick reminder, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting app you're currently listening to us on, and give us a rating of 5 stars because that helps to get the word out about the show. If you would like to connect with me further, be sure to join our free Discord group, The Jesus Witch Church, and give me a follow on TikTok and on Instagram at Lena the Jesus Witch. Now let's go back to our show. So the last little part of that chunk of verses is don't waste what is holy on people who are unholy. Don't throw your pearls to pigs. They will trample the pearls and then turn and attack you. That verse right there is the core of why I don't argue with people on the internet about anything anymore, because people don't want to hear your opinions on the internet. They just want to make noise. A really great example of this, and a stupid example of this, happened to me this freaking morning, and I feel like it happened this morning because God knew I was going to record this episode, and I knew that I was going to record this episode, and knowing that I was going to record this episode is what stopped me. But I opened Facebook on my phone. I don't open Facebook a lot. I've just been opening it a little bit more recently to have somewhere to scroll that I'm not working. You know what I'm saying? Because I open Instagram, I work on Instagram, I work on TikTok. I don't have a Twitter. I don't see the point of that. But Facebook, because I am a grandmother, I have one of those. So I opened Facebook and I saw a post about Taylor Swift and somebody complaining in the comments about her ticket prices and being like, the type prices of these tickets is like the price of a small car, like kind of shit. And I started writing a whole fucking paragraph about how Taylor's tickets were not expensive. How, you know, there were tickets on being dropped on the days of shows for like $17. How, like, you know, if you got the verified fan, you were paying face value. So, you know, you don't pay that crazy amount for a ticket. You know, like, I was really going into how Taylor didn't do dynamic pricing. So, like, as her concert was being sold, like, the concert prices didn't go up because of, like, the demand, yada, yada, yada. Like, I really went hard on this paragraph. And then that verse popped in my head. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. So I deleted the whole thing. Because why am I going to go debate with this random person on Facebook about Taylor Swift concert tickets when I know that they don't want to hear it. They're just, one, salty that they either didn't get a ticket or that, you know, that the resellers are selling it for that much money or something like that. So they're not going to listen because they're just salty. And 2, like, why? Why do I need to do this in my life? What is the point of this? Right? So that's kind of how I approach everything. Like, even with the evangelicals that leave comments on my posts, why am I going to fight with you? Why am I going to try to change your mind? You leave me a list of 10 different verses. Why am I going to try to change your mind when you think you already know everything? What is the point for me there? What do I gain from there? I don't gain any wisdom. I don't gain any knowledge. I don't gain anything besides frustration. There's no point. And you're going to still keep attacking me. So there's no point. So this is why you will never see anything on my TikTok page saltier than me quoting, you know, Matthew 7, 1 through 5. Because I don't see the point in doing that. You know, every once in a while I'll be like, yeah, you're acting like a hypocrite. So, like, what is it about you that makes you feel like you need to come and judge my practice when I've done nothing to you? But I don't feel the need to re-educate these people. If they want to be re-educated, they can go to my podcast, they can go to my, you know, page, they can go to Sarah's page or Hannah's page or anybody fucking else who makes content about this shit on the internet and learn. But they don't want to learn. They just want to spew noise. So I'm not going to give my pearls to those pigs. End of story. That's that. So that is the gist of that little chunk of Bible verses of Matthew 7, 1 through 6. Now let's take a quick look at the other half, Matthew 7, 7 through 12, and then talk about how they all intertwine at the end. So Matthew 7 through 12 says, keep on asking and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, anyone who seeks finds, and to anyone who knocks the door will be opened. Your parents, if your children asks For a loaf of bread, do you give them a stone instead? Or if they ask for a fish, do you give them a snake? Of course not. So if you sinful people know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask him? When you read this particular set of verses in the Bible, the heading for it is encouragement to pray. And Jesus is saying these words and telling you these things because these are like encouragements of like reasons to pray and reasons to talk to God, talk to Spirit, talk to Him. So, firstly, I want to point out that these verses are action based. If you want God to bless you, if you want to be blessed by Spirit, you have to do something first. Seek and you shall find. So, if you're seeking, you're actively looking, you will find. If you're actively knocking on different doors, looking through different pathways, discovering different things about Spirit, the things that resonate with you will call out to you. This verse reminds me of the verse in James where it says, faith without works is dead. You cannot have faith, you cannot be blessed by Spirit without doing work towards being blessed. You can't say to God, I want $1 million and then expect $1 million check to just show up in the mail. That's not how it works. You say to God, I want $1 million, and then you work tirelessly to get that thing, right? To manifest that thing. There's no such thing as reaping rewards without sowing first. And I like this verse too because it's a reminder that like God gives us good things in life. Even when we go through trials, even when we go through tribulations, even when we go through like these weird tests that we experience, these like low points in life, right? These are not necessarily from God. Maybe God is allowing them to happen to us for our own growth, to learn how to be resilient, to build our character. I mean, like, we don't necessarily know why we go through bad things, but at the end of the day, what God is giving us is the reward, is the calm, is the peace, is the growth at the other end of these things. He's not giving us these negative things. He's giving us the rewards that come on the other side of them. So for me, the way that these two groups of verses tie together is very, very simple, right? If you are focused on somebody else's troubles, on somebody else's situations, on somebody else's speck in their eye, and not your own stuff, how are you seeking a fulfilling relationship with Spirit? How are you seeking to be like Christ? How are you knocking on those doors if you are focusing on somebody else's? That's the whole point here. Focusing on ourselves and really learning to expand our own spirituality and bringing people along on the ride with us through our own example, through who we are as people, through reaching out a helping hand when people need it, when they ask for it. I'm not saying like always mind your own business and just like, be a soul person that doesn't help others and isn't kind. That's not who Jesus was. But my point being here is that you can't help others unless you help yourself first. And I know a lot of people say that's in the Bible, and it's not. It's one of those like sayings that people think is there. But there's a lot of truth to that. You cannot help others. You can't help other people. You can't fill up an empty cup from an empty pitcher. You need to be fulfilling yourself first. So that is the moral of all of these, and the lesson of all this. So that was the point that I wanted to get out with this podcast episode and reading these two blurbs in Matthew. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast about Matthew 7, 1 through 12. Don't forget to subscribe to the Jesus Witch podcast on whatever podcasting platform you're currently listening to us on, and give us a rating of 5 stars because that helps get the word on out about the show. Also, don't forget to follow me on the social medias. I have a TikTok, an Instagram. I also have a YouTube, which I totally forgot to shout out in the beginning of this episode. Oh well. They're all Lena the Jesus Witch. I'll leave them in the link, or in the show notes page. You'll find all the links to everything. You'll also find links in the show notes page for different ways you could help support the Jesus Witch podcast. It takes a lot of time and honestly financial energy for me to make the Jesus Witch podcast. So any kind of support really helps me be able to consistently make podcast episodes for you. So we have a Patreon. I have an Etsy shop where I offer Bible-based spells, tarot readings, astrology readings. There's a place where you can donate to the show directly through PayPal or Cash App. There's a bunch of different ways that you could help support us, and just simply sharing the show really helps to support the show as well. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Now let's jump into our verse of the day. So today's verse of the day is Psalm 94, verse 18, which says, I cried out, I am slipping, but your unfailing love, O Lord, supported me. I just like that verse. It's really cute. It's really like sweet. I feel like that would be a really good one to use in some sort of like healing spell or anti-anxiety spell, or, just like a comfort spell in general. So yeah, I like that verse. I had it on my highlights and I wanted to share it with you. But anyway, that was this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast. Thank you so much for listening again. I'll talk to you next week. Goodbye.